On the phone with me, I have Kyla and Adam calling from not so glamorous and beautiful Bend, Oregon, is what I was told. But it's so great that thanks for calling into the show. What's going on?
Well, I would say so for us being married 8 years and also having 3 young kids, we have definitely, obviously had a lot of marriage, and experience, or I guess life has just happened. And we have gotten to a point more recently, I would say, where intimacy for us can sometimes be of rushed, I would say. So, and also I would say it can be um, one-sided, and by that I mean, for me, I get to a point where I become aroused, or I'm in the mood, and so I present myself to Kyla, um, and for her, it's more, it's more, and I don't want to speak out of turn for her, more like I would say a chore. Gets to a point where I've asked so much of her where she feels like she needs a break. So
Okay.
in that for me, I feel I guess a sense of rejection, or I feel rejected when she's not reciprocating, like the excitement that I'm bringing. I also feel like, oh, this is good because I'm presenting myself. So she would feel naturally, in my mind, she would feel like, oh, he's attracted to me right now. He wants to, he wants to pursue me, type of things. For me, when it's not on her end, when it's not that way, and I'm kind of taken back by the fact that she isn't as excited as I am. That's where I become confused and start the feelings of frustrations and like, well, what did I do wrong, type of thing. So that's like
Adam,
kind of where I'm at.
Adam, let me jump in real quick. So you're talking about there in the way you bring this about. There's two things that jump out. One is it's almost like you keep being surprised in the fact that Kyla is not the same brain as you and the same biology as you.
Well, so I think where we were talking about this morning, is that we go through cycles, where there will be, like, I will get, the reciprocated, like, oh yes, absolutely. And then there will be times where maybe that's fallen off,
Okay.
maybe we're intimate too much for her. So anyways, yeah. So I think like the cycles that I feel like maybe we go through
So like sometimes
can.
you guys are in sync in that regard where you both have the same closer to desire levels, interest, exuberance even for it. And then sometimes it's totally mismatched.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And so that's one component, but then the other component, it sounds like what you brought up earlier, Adam, was the idea that you get caught up in you don't want it to just be about you when you present yourself to her.
Right. Yeah. The reciprocated, like, oh yes, I'm excited that this is,
But it's
the feeling of
okay.
mutual excitement,
Okay. But
but
it
not
sounds like
always
she
that way.
will participate for you, not necessarily for herself. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And that's what over time you've gotten to where you're not necessarily seeking that as often.
Yeah. So for me, I get to a point where I don't, in efforts to be courteous of her, and where she's at, and also the feeling on my end of not wanting to feel rejected, or the risk of feeling rejected, that definitely will, back off, or, I will not pursue, more than, because I feel like if I do, then, there's that risk of
Well, of
rejection.
course. I mean, there's always a dilemma of for the higher desire spouse of carrying more the weight of the rejection possibly because you're the one that brings it up more or presents yourself more than she is what you're describing.
Correct.
Okay. So Kyla, jump in here, Kyla. Round out the conversation from your side, please.
Yeah, so I feel like I really think that we both have gotten to enjoy and loved our sex life together. I think, as Adam described, the issue is before kids, we both had such a high sex drive. And then slowly but surely, mine got less. So for me, truly, like once a week would be great. Adam is like an everyday type of guy, which is it's fine. I feel like he is so sweet and loving. So that's been fine for most of the years. But I hit a wall probably a year ago where I did just find myself feeling, as soon as I knew he was trying to give me hints, I would feel like I just don't want to today. And then like resentment kind of built. And so I think like this problem of not wanting to reject him or for him to feel sexually frustrated, but for me to feel like it is another thing on my to-do list. And then I think it did kind of steal the joy from like something we're enjoying together. And I also should add, it depends where I'm at in my cycle. So, like he said, that's where his confusion comes in
Right.
is, well, I'm ovulating. I'm like, yes, that sounds great. And then he's like, wait a second, last week this was great. Like, why now does it feel like a chore? So I think just trying to find out what it looks like for someone who, it's for him not to feel like he's getting like way less than what he needs. But then for me not to feel like it's just obligatory, of like a daily task to add on type thing.
I got you. But in some ways, what you guys are describing with this is this is a perilous situation to where if you keep this in a need or obligatory or a shoulds, you both are going to wind up being pretty frustrated and disappointed. So instead, what if you guys look at this as us go? I'm going to jump on something you mentioned, Kyla, of you kind of pick up on the clues or the cues or the hints that he's interested. And then that can trigger in your mind this idea of, oh, okay, here we go. And then now you're having to go through this whole decision paradigm, if you will, of, well, where are you? Where are you in your cycle? Are you interested? Do you even want to? Are you interested in just something for him? It's kind of like you can have this whole paradigm tree or decision tree you're going through. And
Yeah.
do you bring that up to him, or does this all go on in your own internal dialogue and then figure out
Mm-hmm.
how to act or play the part or send subtle cues in reverse?
Yeah, I would say he knows. We've talked about it quite a bit of just our different sex drives. And I've also told him most of our marriage, like, I'm happy to do that with you and for you. And even if I'm not in the mood type thing, but he also knows I'll tell him like, okay, we have 10 minutes. Like I need to be out of this room in that time or whatever. And then I actually just, if I am interested, I'll tell him, hey, like I would like to be pleased this time as well. So like
Okay.
I feel like we just assume that we're in and out quickly unless I say, hey, I'm feeling it too, or if I'm the one who pursues the intimacy, then of course he knows. So more often than not, it is like known between the two of us that I'm loving on him type situation.
Okay. So the default mode between you guys has evolved to it's going to be more centered around Adam rather than the mutuality, unless you're
Yes,
explicit about it.
correct.
Okay. But prior to kids, that was not the case.
No.
Very mutual prior to kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say, and Adam has expressed that that's been hard for him. I would say I probably actually was more of I think I was actually the higher sex drive before we had kids, which
Okay.
has been hard for Adam.
Okay. Because of the shift.
Yeah, I think my body and just energy, all of it,
Mm-hmm.
distraction. Yeah, because when we're on vacation, the two of us, it's right back. So I would say probably distraction and exhaustion and all of
Okay.
that.
Adam, you're sitting there wondering where did my new bride go?
Yes.
Okay. So then you guys are both having to recognize just the way marriage evolves and the seasons that happen, particularly when we decide to have children, and it will throw a wrench in a lot of things. But it seems to me like you guys, in a lot of ways, you just kind of fight these patterns that are just almost default rather than how do you get a little more clarification with each other about where you are rather than playing the subtle cue hint game?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because am I wrong in that, Adam, right now you're describing you are the one that has to feel like it's on you if when you're interested because your drive's higher than hers. And so you bring it up. How do you decide when to bring it up or not?
Well, I would say for me there is there's a thought process I go through prior to bringing up, intimacy with Kyla. I think at first it's recognizing where she might be at, you know, in the day. So for me, we homeschool our kids, and
Okay.
Kyla, is the primary teacher. For me, a lot of the times, I can easily recognize that, while school is going on, now is not the time to bring up,
Yeah, that's
the
well done, Adam.
yeah,
Well done.
yeah. But I would also say that there are times when I do not see, like, I don't have the awareness of where she's at in her day, where she might be at emotionally, or, what's on her mind. So I think for me, the struggle comes in where if I don't see, that she is doing anything, or if I see that she might be, in a place where, she could say yes, then I might present myself. But a lot of it is, you know, do I feel like where's my best possible chance that this could happen,
So,
with her?
yeah, Adam, describe for me, if you will, the terminology you're using of "I present myself." What what does that look like? Paint a picture for me.
Well, I think a lot of it starts with, for example, she'll be in the kitchen either, doing the dishes, or, making coffee or something. And then I will think to myself, oh, now would be a really good time, so then I will, maybe come up behind her and give her a hug and some kisses on the neck or something, to that's what it would look like for me. And then
That in and of itself is cued to that. Hopefully, she picks up on, hey, I'm interested in sex with you, not just expressing affection to you. There's a difference.
I think a lot for me, it's, I'll come up behind her, kiss her on the neck a little bit, and then ask her if now is a good time. Basically, is now a good time for intimacy? Then
Stop right there, real quick, Adam. Let me ask you a question. Okay. So,
okay,
if one of your frustrations is you don't want to feel like the time she says yes, that it's actually a to-do list, or even as Kyla said, I got 10 minutes, I'm setting a timer, and then I got to be out of this room in 10 minutes. That's what, at least there's honesty there. I like it. But if you don't want that as a potential, do you see that the way you're bringing this up on, hey, is now a good time, is almost setting up that scenario?
I might have been a little turned around. So setting up the scenario.
When you come up to her, if
Uh,
she's making a cup of coffee or she's washing the dishes, which if Adam, man to man, if your wife is anything like mine, if I come up behind my wife and she's washing the dishes, nothing happening there, right? Nothing, except she's just frustrated wanting to get the dishes done in my in my house.
gotcha. Okay,
I'm a distraction at that point, so that is not arousing. Um, but that's just my world. We even did a show on this not too long ago on the hug from behind. But it was the scenario when you come up to her with the "is now a good time" is almost setting up the same scenario of, okay, honey, you got 10 minutes,
gotcha.
because you're just presenting an opportunity or a framework rather than pursuing her. Do you see the difference?
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
So what do you think, Kyla? Are we on to something here?
Yeah, I do think Adam and I actually listened to one of your podcasts that really talked about like pursuing the heart, pursuing relationship, emotional intimacy. And we've talked a lot about that. And that totally then sets me up to like want to be sexually intimate. The hard thing is, I think now changing patterns, because I feel like we like listened to that and did it for maybe 2 days and then right back to like our patterns of like, hey, you want to go to the bedroom? It's like, well, actually, I have to do this and this and this. So and it's hard for me to put down my to-do list as well. So
I got you. Yeah, I mean, the scenario is troublesome because we get so caught up in our normal routines, and it's hard to break out of those and remember that we're lovers also.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and so some of the thoughts that jump out initially with this conversation, though, Adam, particularly, is if you kind of set yourself up for a trap, in a sense of the way you might be pursuing opportunities is also ripe for the likelihood she's going to come back at it just exactly the way it was set up.
Gotcha. Well, and that makes perfect sense too, because I could totally see, you know, being invested in something, other than, know, like a daily task in the home,
Mm-hmm.
and then being distracted by that.
Mm-hmm.
I can, for me, I can see that
And it's
how that would
also,
even just
sorry to step on you there for a second. It's also not beneficial for either of you, for either one of you to become a task in the home for the other. that's
right.
that's not that is not like, ooh, that sounds so sexy. That becomes a, "Oh, just leave me alone. Okay, what do I got to do?"
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's interesting to me that what I'm hearing that can be different in the presenting yourself is what if let's change that terminology. What would that look like that could be different then?
Um. So other than like just changing the verbiage,
Possibly. I mean, the verbiage could be good for sure. I mean, come up with different terminologies of and frameworks or phrases, sure. But what I mean, is there other things you can do that pursue her?
well, yeah, that's actually something, I have a lot of, ideas about like, there will be times, and this doesn't happen often, but there will be times where I'll want to give her a massage. I mean, and I know that if I present myself in a way where it's like, hey, I'd like to give you a massage right now, no expectations, no anything. I just want to give you a massage. Um, I know that that will at least put her in a frame of mind where she will be thinking to herself, oh, okay, he's trying to do something nice for me.
Right.
And that I enjoy that, and that normally bodes well for me, or that typically, that things will go in my favor after that. So I enjoy that. I like to do that for her. I think, like you were saying, with the daily life and how falling into that daily routine um, can be a quick, default,
Mm-hmm.
something that I default to. That is where, it's like, okay, well, how can I, I'll have that thought. Well, how can I do this where, pr- presenting, a massage to her, or being able to give her a massage, like, how can I make that part of daily life? How can I incorporate that more?
Yeah, be careful here though, man, because what you're describing, just what I'm hearing this, and I don't know if I am a little off base with this, but there's an element of you can present this with no expectations for it going beyond a massage, but it seems like it does, which then kind of carries with it expectations the next time you do it. Because again,
Well, and
there's those sneaky little maps and lists that we get in our heads and routines.
yeah, and I think that that is very important for me to recognize. And we've had this, and I wouldn't say this was a friend who was a counselor. I think she has a lot of very good points. I remember having it was kind of like a community group setting, I'll say, and there was times where she would say, "Be careful of the
Oh,
transactional type
yep,
relationship," and
Maddie.
so
Yep.
correct. And so for me, that really stuck with me.
Yeah.
It's, if I can give my wife a massage, but not have like this, transactional type, mentality, then that can, strengthen the relationship
Mm-hmm.
rather than, so for me, not having the expectations, of what could happen, on the other end of the massage
Mm-hmm.
is something that, I try and, like that's, I would say something I just try and give, like, this is a gift.
Yeah.
This is a gift.
Yeah.
And, I don't expect a gift in return kind of thing.
And if you and if you have an expectation and that expectation is unspoken and then unmet and then you feel rejected, realize that's all in your own head. It's not necessarily her.
Right. Yeah. That's just, that's something that I have to deal with on my own.
Okay. So have you guys heard of the idea of how Pam and I talk about this a bunch on a lot of the episodes, that we like to think of sex as a long game in marriage, that you make a
Mhm.
Yeah. I
move,
think we heard that.
you
Yeah.
present yourself in the terminology you're using, and it may not pay off right then, but it might that night, the next day, 2 days later, a week later, what have you. The point is just kind of each of it being expressive in that way towards each other. How does that work out with you guys? if at all?
I think that would be hard for me to. I think I'd have to think about that one. So if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, I think I've actually brought that up a lot in our marriage of just that if we had sex less frequently, a few things, I think I would enjoy it more. It would be less of a task, and there would be more like opportunity to just love on each other for that, for that buildup of that special night or whatever. Adam basically had shared that he would rather just, even if it has to be quick, have sex every day or close to that than to wait and then have a longer, more special night. So that's, yeah, I think when you said the need versus the want, I do think that's a problem for us.
Okay.
And for, yeah, just sexual frustration for Adam. Do you
Yeah.
think that's fair to say, babe?
Yeah, I would say for me, if we're playing a long game where intimacy only happens, once every couple of days, or you know, even longer than that, however that looks.
Well, hold
For
on.
me, I
I'm going to
definitely.
change some terminology here, because what stands out to me, you guys have interchanged the word intimacy and sex quite a bit. And what I'm
Mm-hmm.
hearing you guys say is you want intimate sex. But if
Yeah.
you're what I just heard you describe, Kyla, you're willing to have sex on the schedule he is most or some of the time, but it's not going to be intimate sex every time. It's just going to be sex.
Yes, I would say that's very
So
accurate.
then
And
Adam,
very rarely.
Then you're left with the dilemma of, well, you can maybe have sex every day. If it's not intimate sex, you're having to figure out what do you do accordingly.
Right.
Because this is the classic gridlock issue in some ways, that you don't always get what you want, and she's blocking it because she wants a little bit more time in between. And so you can either face that within you and let that pressure, see what evolves from you on, okay, so if you don't want just sex to be part of a to-do list, if you will, from her, then you either have to figure out how to get her more on board, which I'm assuming you guys have had these conversations, you've tried different things, maybe even, and it's not necessarily coming to fruition, or you need to examine, all right, if she's willing and interested, it's just not exactly what you want. That's more on your shoulders than it is her in that regard.
Right.
I think with this, the hard thing is like how do I want to word it? Like what, first of all, what Adam does with sexual frustration and wishing that I did desire to have sex every single day. And then what healthy compromise looks like, where he's not feeling like he's just, like just not getting what he needs, that. So I feel like the balance is the tricky part for us.
It is, but it's up for each of you to have to face that your own side of the balance, not hope the other person will satisfy your side of the.
Right, and that's not what I would want. I wouldn't want to just continue down a path where she isn't satisfied as much as I am. Yeah, I feel like that would be a very unhealthy road to continue down.
Yeah, that creates some pretty big dilemmas down the road for sure, if not already. So then it becomes.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
and then I would say for me the fact that if I would be if this is all caused by me and my putting my desires before my my relationship with my wife, then that's something. I mean, that I would never want to do that, continue that, because of the unhealthiness that could just continue, and the frustration that could continue building for her.
Again, this comes back to the scenario that I can understand the frustration and the angst both of you guys have. If early in the marriage, this was a much more free flowing, erotic, exciting, and experience with each other, right? I mean, that's kind of what you guys described, that it was easy in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden things changed because you got kids, life continues on. I mean, you're 8 years in, so the shine is completely gone of what married life is. And you also understand what diapers are, and homeschooling, and dishes, and household, and work, and everything. And so there's a lot of weight that changes just the way we orient and factor in all the different things that go on in our life. So but you still seem aligned on you want this part of your marriage to be a good, vibrant part of your lives together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So then you're in this situation of you have the same goal. They're just not always defined. The ultimate outcome isn't defined the same, but the goal is still the same. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
So then it becomes okay. So, Adam, speaking to you real quick, what is it that helps you recognize if what you are saying you really want is intimate sex times with your wife, yet the manner in which it's been going, where it may not happen daily, but it could happen a little less frequently, 1, 2, 3, 4 times a week. I mean, what have you. And a majority of those are then more intimate sexual encounters. Is that really worth for you recognizing, okay, I need to do what it takes to kind of make that cultivate happen?
Yeah, whatever, the mentality shift, would be, like I would love, for me to just be like, okay, well, you know, if I can well, I say sacrifice, I don't know if that's,
Yep.
the right term, but if I can shift my, my thoughts and,
Well, this is more likely confronting what your scripts are of what you want versus what you're getting, and then recognizing you are part of the issue of it not getting what you want.
right.
And if you can do that, then you start to maybe look at how can you still be expressive but less tied to a frequency pattern. I mean, this is one of the things I've had to go through personally too. Of I've gotten to where now that I'm 53. So, I mean, Pam and I've been 31 years into this, so we're much older in this whole process than it sounds like you guys are on 8 years in. But I've come to the conclusion of quantity matters far less than the quality. And so it becomes an element of what do I need to do to help cultivate quality times?
Gotcha. Yeah, that's definitely, it's a hard idea to grasp when for me the frequency is, that's definitely something that like I enjoy, So, for me,
Well, you
letting
enjoy it,
go
but
of
there's a cost to it if it's not mutual, is what you're saying. So then you got to be honest and ask yourself, are you really enjoying it and you're okay with it, or are you not?
right. Yeah, and I think that's where for Kyla, like I desire for her to enjoy it more. For me it's definitely like I feel like I definitely enjoy it more, in the frequency, aspect of things. But also, not wanting to, like I said earlier, not wanting to continue down you know, that pattern where it's more sided towards me and more sided towards, a fairness, of, the
Okay.
quality.
So let me ask you a pointed question, then, Adam, as we're almost out of time. So let's say in the coming days or so, you present yourself with to Kyla and say, hey, I'm really interested in you. I'd love to, is now a good time? I'm using your own terminology, which we've already talked about, probably needs to be shifted some anyway. And she says,
Yeah.
hey, all right, I got 20 minutes. And that's kind of the cue for I'm willing to be there for you, but it's not necessarily for her. What do you do?
Well, I mean, at that point, I would hope I could, you know, shift focus, on her a little bit more. Okay, like within this 20 minutes, how can I make this as enjoyable for her as it is for me?
Okay. Maybe so in essence, then trying to use the time you got.
Right.
Does that speak to you at all, Kyla?
Yes. Um, I think we have, how do I want to word it? I think we have a disconnect of, hear you saying like just basically love on our marriage, love on our emotional intimacy more, and then let the sexual, so for basically for him to be able to recognize my cues of that I'm rushing, and maybe I can communicate with him directly too,
Yeah.
of I'm willing to do this for you, I'm not in the mood. And then I think where you're going with that, at the idea of like, hey, let's wait till you are in the mood, or let's
Well,
Let's
you're picking up on some of that, sure. And again, every couple is gonna go about these things differently. And so I want to make it to where there's some frameworks and you guys use it with the uniqueness of you. But the one thing
yeah.
you're kind of picking up on is important to point out that Adam, when you present yourself with an opportunity to her or an interest in having a sexual encounter with her, and she comes back at you with a, okay, I'm willing to do this for you, then you now have to make the decision of, if you want to continue down that path, you knew what you chose. So if you're frustrated because it wasn't about her, or she didn't enjoy it like you did, or she was just there for you, man, buddy, you better take on yourself before you get mad at her, because you chose that. That's what she offered willingly. And so if she's not interested in that level for herself, but that's what you want, then you have to face the dilemma of, okay, well, if that's what you want, then you might have to say, okay, well, how about we table it till later?
Yeah, which I feel like for me, I mean, there have been times where, you know, like I would say I'm a pretty gentle person. There if she says, hey, this is not the right time, I can be understanding, and also, patience. Like, I think that's something that, I also believe, is true about myself. The rejection piece, I think is just something where, like, okay, God's got to do work, here, or, I just find, more comfort, in, and what he says about me, rather than rather than the rejection that I just experienced of.
Well, okay, but here's the other way to look at it too, that's kind of building off what you're saying, Adam. There's an element of, so Kyla has rejected what is being presented in that moment, not the entirety of you and your marriage, for sure. It's just what's going on in that moment as it pertains to her. That's the rejection, right? That opportunity is what's being rejected.
Yeah.
So it's also then looking at it as the pattern has become over the last several years for you guys, the way it was presented. She's basically having somewhat good judgment saying, yeah, this is really just going to be about you. So I'm willing to do that. But if you hold me responsible for it was just about you, that's on you still.
Gotcha.
Because you chose it. I mean, that's where I think a lot of times we need to slow ourselves down to realize a lot of the things that I do in my life and in my marriage, I'm choosing. So how do I confront myself to realize, wait, the opportunity I sought or set up unfolded exactly like I set it up. So I need to change my game and the way I come towards this to be much more free or loving or unattached to an outcome or focused on her, or seek the heart and the affection, like was just mentioned by her earlier, and then see where it goes, because stuff can be born out of that. You guys have a history that shows that.
Yeah. Well, that's good stuff.
Good.
It's
Kyla, you got anything
definitely
still?
not.
You got anything? Do we need to land for you before we wrap up?
I think that was really good. And I do think when we're talking about it, the like lacking piece, and even when like why, part of why I'm not as sexually interested anymore is just the the emotional intimacy being separate, that like,
Okay.
versus like you asked the question of like in the kitchen when he comes up behind me, like does that mean sex? Like I do love just snuggling or just a hug. And so I think it's a good goal for us to just have more emotional intimacy that doesn't necessarily imply sex.
That's, yeah, I think if when you can make it much more free flowing between you, where
Mm-hmm.
you can have the touch points that are intimate and affectionate and emotional, and you can also have the touch points that are sexual and fun and playful, they can feed off each other. And then the other thought I've got, Adam, because I've tried to do this myself, if you see Kyla at the sink washing dishes, resist the urge to come up behind her and kiss her on the neck, and actually come up beside her and help do the dishes and talk to her.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's definitely, I do enjoy talking to her, so that wouldn't be. And I also enjoy. I also enjoy, relieving some of the, daily mom, tasks that she handles on a day-to-day basis. I love being able to relieve her of some of those things.
Do
Mhm.
those because it's they're touch points that we can steal with each other, and that's what I think sets the groundwork for all the other touch points that we're actually looking for when it comes to good sexual intimacy too.
Yeah, totally. Which I have to give Adam a pat on the back for that. He is the biggest like acts of service guy. So
Ah,
he definitely carries a lot in this home with chores, which I'm thankful
fantastic.
for.
Let me
Yeah.
know how it goes. I'd love to keep track.
Thank you. We appreciate your time.
Yes.